This is a recorded interview for the Midland and Districts Historical Society. My name is Jude Carr. I'm talking to Percy Johnson, and today is the 16th of September 2020. Percy, do I have your permission to record this interview?
Yeah, you do.
Percy, your career as an athlete is well documented. I'd like to talk to you today about your work, life and sport in Midland. Can you please tell me your full name?
Percy John Johnson.
And what are the place and date of your birth?
28/01/1933, Kalgoorlie.
Can you please tell me your mother's name?
Irene Scott.
And your father's name?
Percy Johnson.
And the names of any sisters or brothers that you have?
Elder sister was Eileen. Then my brother was Jack or John. Then my other sister, who's still alive, is Moya.
You were born in Kalgoorlie. Where did you grow up?
Kalgoorlie till I was probably... I went to school in Kalgoorlie. I was born in Kalgoorlie. I grew up in Kalgoorlie. I was educated at initially primary school at the convent in Kalgoorlie, and then moved to CBC Kalgoorlie. And then because CBC Kalgoorlie didn't go on beyond year 10, Mum and Dad wanted me to be educated a little bit further than that, which probably was a good idea, and so I came down to Board at Aquinas and completed my, in those days, leaving certificate there.
Mm-hmm. Where did you do your training to become a pharmacist?
In those days, we had lecturing and so forth at the School of Pharmacy, which was in St George's Terrace, but then your association was you were indentured to pharmacists. It was more like an apprenticeship, so that when you'd done your lectures, say you did 3 or 4 lectures or other stuff that you were doing in the morning, and you finished at 2 o'clock doing that, you went back and worked in the chemist shop till close time, which was a really good way because we learned customer communication. And we learnt, and we did a lot of, and nowadays, in my day, it was a big compounding business. Chemists made up their own medications, ointments, lotions, mixtures, all those sort of things. And and so you got back doing that. When you finished, you just didn't knock off and then go and wander around, go swimming, go to the beach or whatever you like they do today after they get their lectures. We had to go back and work on the job. So we became very proficient after 4 years doing the course. We were ready to work with people because that's what we've been doing. It was good.
Okay, so were there any of the medications that came pre-prepared?
There was a lot of, there's always been tablets and, but we made up our own suppositories, and we made up our own capsules. We packed all those sort of things in those days, as a result of which you had to have great knowledge on maximum doses of virtually everything that you came in contact with. When we did our course, 4-year course, and in your last year, you got 1,000 doses of different types of things, phenobarbital and things like that, chucked at you in your final examination, and if you got one thing wrong on an overdose size, but one thing wrong, you failed. So we really had to know how much you could give them before you killed them.
Oh, that's
which
very
was a good
reassuring.
idea. The best part about being a chemist is you try to keep them alive as long as you can. It's good for business.
So, why did you choose to become a pharmacist?
Well, I did first year medicine. I was going to be a doctor, but in those days, I did first year medicine. That was 51. And in those days, there was no medical school in WA, so you had to have 2 junior languages to get into Adelaide, to continue in Adelaide. I'd only done 1. And Melbourne University needed 1, but that year, the year when I completed first year medicine, and I passed that at UWA, but at the end of that year, Melbourne were pretty well full of their own students. I could have gone and lived in Geelong because Geelong wanted me to go over there and play footy there. But that would have meant a lot of travelling, and by then I'd met my wife, who I was very fond of at that stage, and I went home and spent a year in Kalgoorlie, and I flew down every Saturday to play footy with East Fremantle, and gradually got fonder and fonder of Shirley, who I married. And one of my dad's mates was a chemist, and he said, well, he'll get concessions because he's passed first year medicine. So why doesn't he become indentured to me and become a pharmacist? It's a good job, and he can stay here in WA, stay with the girl he loves, and have a good career. And I'm glad I did, because I love pharmacy. It was good.
So where was that first one where you were indentured?
Nedlands. Sterling Highway, Nedlands, with a fella named Hoyle, Dick Hoyle. Yeah. It was good.
How long were you there for?
4 years, you do 4 years. You do 4 years as an apprentice, they call you, or an associate, or whatever, they don't know what they called us, but that was what we had to do. Work in a pharmacy as soon as we finished our lectures, just to keep that grounding, and it was good.
And did you stay on there once you qualified?
No, as soon as I qualified, then you wander out and take jobs around the place. And then eventually I went into a business as too young an age, 25 I was. I went into a business in Victoria Park, and then at 26 I got appointed captain coach of Swan Districts footy club, and we thought it was a good idea if probably I set up a pharmacy in Midland, because Swans, Midland, Guildford, all those areas, and so, and I had a doctor's surgery up there. Dick Roberts was the club doctor at Swans, and St Andrew's Clinic was close to that, so I transferred my pharmacy to Midland on Great Eastern Highway, where I spent from there to 72. Yeah.
So what year was that you started there?
I started in Midland in 59.
59.
Yeah, I opened the shop there in 59 and sold in 72. By that stage, Shirley's sisters' families were all growing up. She was a Fremantle girl, and really I'm a Fremantle bloke. That's where I played my footy at East Fremantle. That's where all my long-standing mates were, and all their families were starting to grow up, and my kids, my boys, they were good footballers themselves and good cricketers, and they were starting to have to find a pathway to their sporting future, and they all wanted to go back and play with East Fremantle, where I'd played most of my footy. So it was time for us, and someone made me a good offer on the pharmacy, and we shifted back to Fremantle, to East Fremantle area.
So you were there about 13
Yeah, 59
years.
to 72, yeah.
What did you like most about being a pharmacist?
I just think in my day, I think a general practitioner I would have been, other than a pharmacist, that would have been good. I just think it's your ability to be serviceable to people. If I had my life over again, I would be a pharmacist again, because you had the opportunity. People had come in, they were uncertain about little problems were happening in their lives or happening in their kids' lives and so forth, and by listening. And the big secret of being a good chemist was to listen, not to talk. Let people talk, and you could hear by what they were saying, by the symptoms they were throwing, the way they were feeling. You pretty well got a guide as to whether you could help them through the pharmacy. And the help through the pharmacy more often than not was reference to go and see your doctor, and from there we'll see where that takes us. So it just gave you a chance to be helpful to people and be interested in people's health. And I really like health. Working in health latterly, I've done, well, for many, many years after I worked in remote Aboriginal communities in health programs, because very interested in diabetes in Aboriginal people. A lot of that started in Midland, and then through Fremantle, and later at Willagee, where I had a chemist shop. We had a lot of Aboriginal people, and my interest in their predisposition to head to diabetes was something that I was interested in. So I worked with on the Murney Bridge in remote Aboriginal communities, and I used my pharmacy a lot in that. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Whereabouts was the pharmacy in Midland located, did you say?
Great Eastern Highway.
Right.
Yeah, Padbury Terrace is gone now, and Sayer Street. That's where what do you call it? You know the name of the joint. When I was on the council in Midland, we rezoned the Midland Railway area, and it's on the northern side as you're heading towards Greenmount, out of Midland heading up towards Greenmount. It's called, you'll know the name.
Midland Gate, is it?
Midland Gate, yeah. So we rezoned that, and that took over Sayer Street. I think the the fella that bought from me, he called that pharmacy St Andrew's Pharmacy, and that's still in Midland Gate. It's still the pharmacy in there, yeah.
Ah, okay. So, what kind of competitors were there? How many other pharmacies were there when you first went to
Yeah, a
Midland?
heap of pharmacists, I don't know, 6.
Mm.
Yeah, but there was enough there for all of us. I didn't want to make £1 million. I had other things to do other than make £1 million. I was coaching Midvale Junior Footy Club and still playing league footy and state footy, and then there was other things to do. But enough money's enough money, and I was getting enough.
What about the others? What sort of relationship did you have
Good.
with your competitors?
Yeah, good. Yeah, no, and the doctors in town were good. No, yeah, we used to all right, if I got a script for something and I didn't have stock, for whatever reason, I could ring Mike Proctor and say, "Oh, you got this," and I'd go around and get it off me, and I'd send someone around, and he'd do the same with me. No, pharmacists aren't vultures. The relationship was good. Claude Sadler was there, and it was good.
So you all supported each other by the sounds of things.
Yeah, well, there was no need to be jealous or over, there's plenty of this, Midland was a town where enough money for everybody was enough money.
Mm-hmm.
That was the beauty of the workshops and the abattoirs and so forth. People were on a wage, on an income. They knew what they were getting. They knew what they had to expend on their house support, and they knew what they had to spend. And business people were much the same. I mean, if you had you needed a bit of money because sometimes you had to help somebody. Yeah, it was good.
So the premises that you moved into, were they
It was
already
an old
there?
shop.
Yeah.
It was an old shop. People named Farr. It was the front of their house. It was a vacant block next door. Little walkway with a hedge. You'd think I'd get broken away every day of the week, but I never did. But it was just an old shop. It was there, and I saw it, and I thought, what a good idea this would be. So I shifted all my fixtures from where I was in Vic Park, and they fitted in nicely. And from one day I was operating in Vic Park, and by the next Monday I was operating in Midland.
Wow, that's efficient.
Yeah, but you've got to do things, don't you?
Were the premises rented or you bought them?
I rented them, yeah.
Right.
I rented them off Farrs till, they was off the front of the house. They were terrific people.
So they were still living there?
Yeah, they lived in the house at the back, yeah. Yeah, it was good. Didn't cost me a lot. Turned an old shop into something that was worthwhile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it wouldn't have been very big though if it was in the front of their house.
Yeah, it was. Well, see, pharmacy today's become a bit of a marketplace. They sell a lot of toilet rolls. I never sold a toilet roll. Mine pharmacy was, toothpaste and that sort of stuff's always been associated with pharmacy. But generally, pharmacy, it was medication and medicine. Basically, you're selling cough medicines and that sort of stuff, ointments, sunburn creams, and that's what pharmacy was. And you didn't specialise. You didn't sell the odds and ends that they sell them. They sell dishwashing liquid and all that stuff these days. That wouldn't have been any good to me. I really enjoyed the. Later, when I went to Willage, it was terrific. I had 6 doctors next door, and I'd do a couple hundred scripts every day. So it was purely pharmacy, and I liked that. Yeah.
So what sort of volume were you doing at Midland?
Oh well, I can't recall. Gee, you're talking back to 1970. I was probably doing 30 or 40 a day there.
Right.
Probably maybe 50 a day. Good day, but. When you talk about doing 200 a day, that's a lot of scripts. It's a lot of, some days at that shop in Willage I do 300 plus. Now I'm the only chemist there. You work out open at 8:30 in the morning, finishing at 5:30 at night. Like every Saturday morning, 8:30 till 12, I'd always do 100. So it kept you going. Any more than that you couldn't load, your mind couldn't handle any more than that. I had great girls that worked for me, and they'd write repeats and so forth, but handling the medication's the chemist's job. So much more than that on your own you couldn't do. Yeah, 50 gave me enough for my mates to come in and have a lunchtime chat with me, and people to call in and talk a bit about footy and a few of the racing people, because I'm a horsey person too. they'd drop in on their way to Northern Races with the float. I wasn't giving them anything to put in their horses. A lot of people think I was. But we had a lot of fun, yeah.
It sounds like it was very sociable.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm a sociable bloke. Yeah, no, it was good. Lindsay Johnson, one of my best mates, he played footy for Swansea, come down from Kalgoorlie, and he became an umpire. And yeah, every lunchtime he came up and we'd sit out the side, particularly this time of the year. You know, September the sun was good, or May when the weather was great. Yeah, and 4 or 5 blokes would come round, we'd sit out the side and have a bit of tucker, and it was good. Yeah, and if there was a script come in, the girl would say, "You better come in and do this." And yeah, but there was a lot of social going on. Yeah.
Can you describe the layout inside for me?
In the shop,
Yeah.
just a rectangular shop, front glass window, somewhere you could put a bit of a display in the front glass. Then you walked in, on one side there was shelving, on the other side there was shelving, then there was a counter with a till. I like that ringing. Then you had the dispensary at the back, that was isolated from that. I had a see-through mirror that was only one-way see-through. I could see them, they couldn't see into the dispensary. And the dispensary area was just big enough to do what you had to do. You had a bench where you compounded your medications, you had your sinks and your weight scales in a place where you had your weights to weigh the powders that you had to put into the medication, and that was just laid out there, and it was all just workplace. Yeah, just all functional.
What was the reason for customers not being able to see you?
Well, I suppose it's a private thing. Mainly, I didn't want people talking to me when I was dispensing. Mainly that, like later, say, go to Willage, and that again that's East Fremantle area, and a lot of my mates that I played a lot of footy with, they'd pull up out the front and want to come in, or if someone would ring me on the phone and they'd want to talk, say, footy or something else, well, I would just say to them, later at Willage, Shirley was working with me, my wife, she'd just say, "No, he won't talk to you, he's busy dispensing." And when I was doing dispensing, I didn't want to talk to anybody but do what I did. I wasn't good at doing 2 things at once, and I did get frustrated, and I could get short with people who wanted to talk to me while I was, you know, yeah, like I spent a long time in pharmacy, 50 plus years as a chemist, and I never ever let a mistake get out of the chemist shop, and I can guarantee you that. With the checking we did, everyone checked, the girls checked me, but the final check that came back to me, script to medication, and it's an absolute fact. I never made a mistake. Never. I'm not going to tell you the first time I looked at a script, I didn't read it as a mistake. But by the time it went out there to the person, they got the right stuff and the right doses and the right, because I couldn't talk and do it the other. So I kept people away from me where I was working. I can get angry if I get frustrated.
Can you?
Yeah, I can get angry.
Oh, I better not frustrate you then.
I can get wild, yeah.
Tell me about the staff who worked for you in Midland.
Well, they're all local girls. Every one of them were local girls, like they were people, Midvale girls. You know, Midvale was associated, well, it was the edge of Midland dropping on the Midvale where my chemist shop was. I coached the Midvale Junior Footy Club. I love the Midvale area and the people. And you picked, yeah, it was an opportunity to give young girls from that area a job. It's a hell of a good job for a young girl in a chemist shop. Still would be. It's a job where people respect you. You know, you get angry sometimes when I go to Woolies and so forth, the disrespect that's shown to the girls that are working there. But in a chemist shop, they get real respect, and they get to become pretty well knowledgeable in pharmacy because people are asking them questions. They're listening to the answers you're giving, so they grow into pretty well knowledgeable. They'd make real good mums, I reckon, all those girls. Yeah, they would.
Did any of those girls go on to take up pharmacy themselves?
No, but I had 2 people that did apprenticeships with me. Brian Gibson lived just a couple hundred yards from the chemist shop, and he later had a pharmacy in York and did really well. And Stan Kalis, he worked for me and was an apprentice. He was with me where I was at Vic Park, and then came with me to Midland. and he later became a high-profile lecturer in pharmacy.
Mm-hmm.
He went away from the dispensing side of it, or the business side of it, and he went back in and became he was a professor at, he became the teacher. So, I had a couple of blokes do that, but I always picked, I like girls that came from the area because they knew the people, and that was good.
Yeah.
That was good.
What sort of qualifications did they need to
No.
work with you?
No, didn't have to be geniuses at school. I didn't ask for school reports.
Mm.
I knew their families. Good families produce. No, people are good anyway, aren't they?
Yeah.
People are good. You know, I can't believe how you can make people bad, but people make them out to be bad, but I've never run into them. They were good. Yeah. Good families, produce good people, and they knew what was required in the chemist shop, and first thing in the chemist shop I said to them was, I don't pay your wages, those people walking in the door do.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as they walk in the door, you give them your total attention, and there's no cross-talking between two girls or me. It's the customer and you.
Yeah.
And they got to know that, and they did that good. It was good.
What about your wife? You mentioned that she worked at Willagee. Did she work at Midland with you?
No, she didn't know. We had 5 kids. You know, we grew up in the days where, Shirley was a mum, and the kids were at school, and then so the tuck shop needed and the lunch. She needed to go down there and do those things, and she needed to be home when the kids come home from school.
Mm-hmm.
You know what a kid says the first time they come home from school and they come into the house? I'm going to tell you what they do. My kids didn't. I had 5 of them. They bring the school bag in, they chuck it on the floor, they yell out, "Mum," and then they walk and open the fridge. And Shirley, we had 5 and she was home. And then when the kids were off, when we came back down to Fremantle, she said, now it's my turn, and she said, now I'm buying a news agency, and her and a couple of her sisters ran a news agency.
Oh, okay.
And I went out and relieved around doing a bit of pharmacy around the place.
Right.
And when I didn't have a job for a day, I didn't have a relief job, I would go and work in the news agency, but my specialty was selling the toys. Because news agencies in those days used to have a hell of a lot of toys.
Yeah.
My kids used to come in the shop and they'd listen to me, and everybody that came in for a birthday or Christmas and so forth, and I had trucks that could climb up the walls and so forth, and I'd say to people, my kids have got one of these and they love them. And my kids used to say to me, gee, Dad, you can tell lies. But I sold a lot of trucks. But she ran the shop, and that was her turn. And then she said, I've had enough of this, you better get back into pharmacy. The offer came, I went and worked with the Friendlies where I was chief pharmacist. We had a group of 7 shops. And then they broke up and they were going to be sold individually, and I wanted to buy the Willagee one, which was more my type of pharmacy with the doctors. And she said, all right, the news agency goes, and I come and work in that. But my daughter worked too. She'd already worked in the Friendlies there, and we had 3 or 4 other girls working there.
Mm-hmm.
So she came and worked in the shop, and she handled all the money. I was hopeless with money. Hey, when Shirley died, which was too bloody young, but when she died, I didn't know how to pay HBF because she did all that stuff. She did all my banking. She handled all the money, the wages, and she was good with the customers because she was a Fremantle girl. And the Willagee people were people like her dad was a lumper, and they were lumper type people. They were just ordinary working people, and she was good. Yeah, so she worked with me till she got cancer and died.
Whereabouts did you access your supplies?
Well, in those days, you had Faldings and Drug Houses of Australia and Rumbles were the main medical suppliers. They were just purely pharmacy suppliers. That's what they were. And you had, so there was adequate supplies, and these 3 people were very good, very supportive, and they were supportive of each other. So it wasn't a dog-eat-dog world in those days. And you got a delivery every day. They'd ring you, the girl would ring you from one of those. And you'd have your orders, and you'd have them in different orders as to what you bought from different people. And you put your orders through, and the next morning they'd turn up. And that's where you got them. And you kept your stocks up. And so stock was easy to control because you're only a day away from replenishing, so it was easy.
I'm quite fascinated by the fact that you made so many of the things yourself. Presumably that would isn't the case now.
Did
You made so many of the medications
yeah, we
yourself.
made the ointments and lotions and these were oil and water emulsions. You know, like oil and water does a mix.
Yeah.
So you need an emulsifying agent to make them mix, and you need to know how to mix that. You know, you just couldn't go one way and then stir them the other way because you cracked the emulsion.
Yeah.
So we learnt to compound the medication. Ointments, you made your own ointments. Doctors would prescribe, you go in with a skin condition to a doctor, skin specialist, and he'd put in 5 or 6 different things, you know, to treat what he considered, and he was probably betting a little bit each way because he'd put in 3 different things. He wasn't sure whether it was a bacterial thing or an allergic thing.
Right.
So you'd have a little bit of each of those things in, and you'd weigh out the quantities required that he'd prescribed, and then you'd compound them into your base for your ointments. You know, there were creams that were absorbed, there were ointments that just were topical, that went over the top of your skin, and there were lotions that, for burns and so forth, and there was we made all our own cough medicines. Very rarely did they buy off the counter, doctors prescribed, and they wrote their own formulas, and stomach medication was big, you know, antacids and that sort of stuff, and aspirin medications. People took, like, if someone had a bad infection and they were having high temperatures, doctors prescribed aspirin type preparations we made up because you only want them to take the aspirin for a period, and so you'd give them an 8-ounce bottle, and they took, well, it came down to half an ounce, a tablespoon as a dose, which was the half ounce, so it'd last them 16 doses, and by then the doctor said he didn't want them any more on that, and that was good. So we did all those things, They couldn't do that today, these people.
No.
They couldn't do that today.
At what point did you see it change?
Well, I was still doing it when I was, I probably stopped working in a chemist shop probably about 2012. And you were still doing a little bit of it, but most of the stuff now is already pre-prepared and off a shelf, and they weren't as good as we were at what they did, I reckon.
It sounds amazing.
It was good. But it's like anything. If you're a truck driver and you've got a truck that in those days when I drove a truck, and you had a truck that you had a lot of gears to go through, you got used to and good at what you had to do. If you do a job, you become good at your job. And that was our job. And that's where working going back to the pharmacy in the period after you come out of where you got your lectures, we learnt that on the job because we did a heck of a lot of that on the job. I mean, the chief pharmacist, the chemist you're working for, he oversaw what you did, but we were doing it on the job, so we got good at that. And by the time we were qualified, we were good with customers because we'd been in the shop for 4 years. We could do everything you had to do, and we could go out and you could earn your keep, and people could turn their backs on you and know it was going to be all right. It was a good system. Worked good.
Yeah, 'cause now you generally don't even speak to the pharmacist.
And that's sad.
Yeah.
I spoke to every person I ever dispensed a medicine for. Walked to the counter and said, "G'day, how you going? Are you taking anything else? Because that's important, you know." In our days, drug interreactions, side effects and so forth of medication was something we were very aware of. So you walked out and you said to them, "You're taking anything else? You're on a vitamin preparation like they wanted to buy their Berocca or something like that." And you knew Berocca, say, contained ascorbic acid, which was an acid. And you knew that probably wasn't going to be all right with what they were taking now, so you had a bit of a yarn with them and sort of said, "Well, it might be a good idea to knock that off for a week or so till you get this stuff right." So, no, I reckon I never, ever had a medication go out that I didn't go out and say, "G'day, how you going?" And, what else is going on. But you knew your people pretty well. Regulars were regulars and you knew them pretty well.
That certainly doesn't happen now.
No, you saved a few lives in your time with people that were doctors had put them on a medication. Mrs. Gardner that lived next door to us in Midland, wonderful old lady, And when I went to live next door to her, she wasn't a customer of mine. But when we moved to Frederick Street, and her husband had been killed on the crosswork in Midland. The truck had run him over, so we started to look after her. And so I started to look at her medication and do her scripts, and all of a sudden I'm saying, "Oh, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this, you've got this," and four of them sounded to me like they're doing the same job. So the doctor was a mate of mine, and what happens, doctors at times will write a prescription, and then they'll come in for something else, so they'll write another prescription, and then people come back and say, "I want a repeat of that first one," so they keep, and eventually they're taking medications that are actually in conflict with each other. And yeah, a lot of times you sort of sort out the prescription and say, "Well, you're taking this and you're taking that. I don't think that will go good with this," so you'd ring up the doc. "Oh God, Percy, I forgot about that. She just asked the repeat, asked for the repeat, so I gave her the repeat." Yeah, no, and we'd fix that up and it was good. But we did a lot of that. Every chemist in my day did that. And they were good at that. And they cared. Like I said, you didn't want to kill them.
Yep. Yeah.
You wanted them coming back.
Yep.
You kept them alive.
So, that's quite frightening, because that says to me that there's probably a lot of people today taking medications that are conflicting.
Yeah, they could be. See, now in the computer it flashes up and it says drug interaction. But that drug interaction flashing up, but when you're doing it on a computer, you're not concentrating. And our day was typewriter stuff.
Yeah.
And you had to write out the repeats. Like now the computer does the whole damn thing. If a script's got 5 repeats on it, you punch all that in and it throws it out. But when you've got to physically get down and write something out, and you're writing it, copying it off the prescription, and you're writing it on a repeat form, it sticks in your head. And then you go and type the label physically yourself.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's a 3-way check. And all of a sudden you start to think, and then your mind says to you, "She was on, say, a beta block, which slows the heart rate down, and now the doctor's put her on this." And I said, yeah. Well, one of my best mates, Con Regan, he came around and said, "My wife's horrible, she's horrible, Beryl." And I said, he wasn't coming to me. I was a bit crooked on him because he's a real good mate, and he wasn't coming to me. The scripts were somewhere else. Anyway, and I said, I'm bringing the scripts around. I said, "Good, blimey, Charlie, what's a pulse rate?" So we went and checked her pulse rate's down to about 34, So she had to get whacked in hospital for a couple of weeks, and because 2 things were slowing her heartbeat down.
Yeah.
And those things happen. But between the doctor and the chemist, it was good. There was a lot of respect, and the doctors did expect us to be checking that.
Right.
They did. Some people went to 2 doctors. They do that. Particularly nowadays, they go there to get double up on their painkillers, and you've just got to, you've got to be aware of these things.
Well then.
But I'm talking as me as a chemist. I believe that pretty well every chemist in my day had my mentality. I believe that. Yeah, it was a very proud profession.
Yeah.
We did rate ourselves. I think it was the most trusted profession, rated as such by everybody. Yeah, chemists were good. You could rely on them.
So you obviously treated your customers well. How did your customers treat you?
Good. Yeah, I don't ever remember having a blue with a customer. Like I said, I want them coming back. They made the till ring, but that wasn't the reason. But no, customers were good. Yeah, well, I like people. Yeah, I like people. I think people are best. That's what annoys me today about bloody mobile phones, and people leave a message for you, instead of ringing up and saying, "G'day, how you going?"
Yeah.
Yeah, I like people. I like talking to them. And I think if you start talking, you listen and you hear. And you can almost hear a mental health problem growing or starting by what they're saying, can't you? You can hear there's a depression there.
Yeah.
Something's in their mind. They're worrying about something.
Yeah.
But if it's a text message or something, you don't feel that tone, that... Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, if you're talking to people, you hear things.
In
a chemist shop, their eyes tell you if they're sick or not.
Okay, how's that?
Well, their eyes will tell you that they're not well, I reckon. People, when they're down, their eyes tell you. Yeah, you can look in their eyes and say, yeah, there's something wrong here,
Yeah.
I reckon. I still believe that.
Mm.
Yeah.
You mentioned that, treating Aboriginal customers.
Yeah.
So, how large a number were they of your customers?
Yeah, well, what's a percentage of, they say, the population, probably whatever it is, not a, yeah, but at Midvale there were percentage of Aboriginal people, at Willagee the percentage of Aboriginal people, and I get on really well. I worked for 10 years at Clontarf Aboriginal College, and then we lived and worked on remote Aboriginal communities for up to 6 and 8 weeks at a time. And a lot of my best friends are Aboriginal people. I really, I like Aboriginal people. And but their health worries, my best mates are, some of them now are too damn fat. And I keep saying to them, you're too fat, you'll get diabetes. And diabetes kills them.
Yeah.
They lose their legs, they lose their toes, and they drink too much Coke, which is full of sugar, and that's what we did. Ernie Bridge, who was just a great bloke, Ernie Bridge, he's a legendary bloke in this state. He was a state parliamentarian, minister in the state government, and his love, and he came from Halls Creek, and his love of Aboriginal people and his awareness of diabetes, because he had it, and he and I got together and we had this program going, and but we worked on getting the Aboriginal people to carry the message, because people of culture understand how they understand the people that they're living with, and they understand why they're doing the things and taking the things, or the things that may be leading them into the problems, health problems they get. And I still believe that's the only way to solve Aboriginal problems. And it's not the politician type Aboriginal people that I think solve the problem or can solve the problems. I think it's the ordinary Aboriginal people. There should be more of them making their own decisions, and we should be listening to them rather than telling them. And that's what happens so often. When we went into Aboriginal communities, there would be good white fella blokes going on our community, and they would drop pamphlets and tell the health workers, this is what you should be doing, but then they got on their car and drove out.
Yeah.
Whereas we stayed for 6 and 8 weeks and then got Aboriginal people to carry that message to the people in a way that they could, and then we got them interested in doing it for themselves. And I believe that's the way everything should be done with Aboriginal people. We should stop telling. We should start listening and let them do it for themselves, and it'll work. That's how I believe it anyway. So, yeah. Yeah, I get into a lot of, I hate racism, absolutely my biggest. I give people time. If I hear one of my friends say a racist remark about people, and particularly, but mainly Aboriginal people, because that's where it lies. And I just say to them, all right, you were suspended for 12 months. I'm not talking to you for 12 months. Yeah, I just believe, I reckon everybody should. If you hear someone say something that you believe is wrong, and you don't say anything, your silence is agreeing with them.
Yeah.
I reckon you've got to put your finger in their chest and say, cut that out, that's wrong. Whether you make sure I'm popular or not. And I wish Australians would do that more. It'll cure it, but we've got to listen to them, not tell them. Everybody. That's Asian people, that's all my people around here come from everywhere. I don't see people, I don't see where they come from, I see people.
Yeah.
You know, I heard someone say, it's interesting, I don't know where this will take me, but I heard someone say, I'm an Aboriginal person and you wouldn't understand what it's like to be an Aboriginal person. Of course I wouldn't, because I'm not. It's like, how can I understand what it's like to be a woman?
Yeah.
Because I'm not.
Yeah.
So to me that always seems a ridiculous statement. I see people, and I think if we all did that, we'd be all right.
So, since you, don't see race, are you able to recall who your other customers in Midland were?
Well, they were Wesolowskis, and they were Sariches, and they were Babbages, and they were they were Stefanellis and DeLucas and Priados, and Midland was pretty mixed up. Like my street, Frederick Street, or our street, Frederick Street, where that brick comes from. That was the United Nations where we lived in Frederick Street. Like it was, Rebishes and Rosiacs, and my next door neighbours on one side were Rawlings. They were Poms, and they were great people, and they were Poms, and they used to boast about it. And she had, Mrs. Rawlings, she had a stump on one side that she used to stand on. We had a big high picket fence, solid picket fence. Shirley had a stump on the other side, and they used to hang over the fence chatting with each other all day. And we didn't see. Yeah, well, Shirley herself was Italian. She was a Raphael, and her dad was Italian. They came from Italy, and I don't know where they came from in Italy, but they came from Italy, and they were Italians. He used to call me a stupido bastardi. I think when you were and he was right. But so the street was a street of people from United Nations, and that's what we saw, people. And then when you went to De La Salle, that was the Swan. We had Sariches, and then we had some Aussie blokes too, and Aussie blokes, Johnsons and Stocktons and Mountains, but they were all one up there. They were all. That's what I liked about Midland. They were a community. They were a community, and we liked each other and enjoyed each other and respected each other, and that's what Midland was. It wasn't a suburb; it was a community. Good place.
So tell me about Shirley when you met and married.
Well, I met her at an East Fremantle Footy Club dance. I don't know, every second Saturday we played at home at East Fremantle, and we had a big barn. It was not like today where they have clubs where you get drunk. We had a big barn, and we had a bandstand, a little bandstand in the corner, but we had a big slide thing that went across the middle of the barn. And on game day, one side changed on one side, and we changed on our side. Then on the home game, we pulled that sliding door across, and that became a big dance hall. So every home game we had a dance, and we bought our few bottles of beer which we put outside, or we'd have a little keg in the corner, and we had a lovely little, it was a dance band, and people played, and it was good, and so local girls turned up. There's some good-looking blokes there, they heard. And one of Shirley's sisters was going out with Ray Laurie, one of the players that played with me, and she came along, and I thought, that's not a bad-looking girl. And she made a good decision. She thought I was the best-looking bloke. So we paired up, and we got engaged through the footy club. We got engaged in Bunbury on the long weekend in January. It was my birthday weekend, end of January. We used to go down there. We played a lot of tennis in the summertime. There were all the footballers. We had our social activities. We played a lot of tennis, and we had a group. And then Bunbury always had their championships down there at the end of January. And so we'd take teams down there and play in their championships down there, and that's when we decided that we'd already probably made up our minds. She was, what was she, 18 or 19? I was all of 20, heading for 21, I suppose. But we reckon it was a good idea, so we got engaged, and we got married from there. And we got married at St Patrick's Church in Fremantle. I'm a Catholic, and she became a Catholic, and we said we'd have 5 kids. One handful was enough, and we did. And when we had 5, we reckon we didn't want to get on the other hand. And we had the 5 kids, 4 boys and a girl. And it just seemed like a good idea. She was a good-looking girl.
So what are your children's names?
Our oldest bloke's Percy, and Greg, he died. Greg, damn it, that's Greg there. The bloke sitting with the glasses there. It's his son, one of his sons with the baby in the background, and that's his son. And Greg was second, then Rob, and along came Sue, and Pete was our last. So we said we'd have 5. We felt a bit soft because Laurie Nugent, and then they all had 6 and 7. But she reckoned 5 was enough, so and I suppose it was. But we could have handled 6 or 7 at Christmas holidays. We were always taking kids out from Castledale and Clontarf and like from the orphanages, and we'd bring them out during the school holidays. So we could have handled 6 or 7 or 8, I reckon.
So were any of your children born up Midland?
Percy was born at he's from Anil. Greg was born at St John's in Subi. Rob was born at St John's in Subi. We were in Midland. We went to Midland. Rob was born in '59, so he was about, he was born at St John's, but we were already in Midland. Susie was born in Midland, and Peter was born at that Catholic place, St Anne's in Mount Lawley. But they were Peter and Sue. Sue was born at Midland Hospital, yeah.
The Swan District.
Swan District, yeah. Yeah. She was born there.
So when you moved to Frederick Street, you had 2 children then?
Yeah, we lived in Lloyd Street initially. We rented a joint when we first went there. Like, it was quick. I got appointed coach of Swan Districts. We shifted the chemist shop. We were living in Melville because I was playing footy there at East Vale. And we decided Brian Gray, who was best mate in Midland, he was a butcher up there and he had a big truck. And he came and carted all our gear, and we moved into a rented house. Good people became good friends of ours that we rented off up there in Lloyd Street, and then we looked around for a house to buy. And Dick Roberts, the doctor up in Midland, he said, he used to live with this old lady when he first went to Midland in this house. And he said she'd died, or she was going into a home or something, and he said, this will be the house for you, and price was right. I was earning a bit of money playing footy for Claremont at the time, and we bought it. Big old joint. We reconditioned, remodeled the kitchen area so that there'd be plenty of room. It used to be a little kitchen and a pantry and then a tiny vestibule thing, and so we cleared all that out and opened it out. And, it was a damn good old house. 1909 it was built.
How many bedrooms did it have?
1, 2, 3, and there was a sleep out that was well enclosed, and that was a bedroom type. But when we had 4 boys, so we had double-decker beds in one room. Sue had her own room, of course. And Shirley and I, we had our room. They were big rooms, and the lounge room was a gigantic thing with a big open fire. Yeah, it was, great old house. You could play footy up and down the passageway. It was that big.
Yeah?
Yeah, taught plenty of young kids from De La Salle to kick the footy up and down that passageway, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Why did you do that inside instead of
Because it was
outside?
raining outside and it was dark. They'd come home from school. These were kids that had gone on, and I coached at De La Salle, first of all at Midvale, and then when the boys started to get onto the stage where they were going to go to De La Salle, it was De La Salle, it's La Salle now, it became co-ed. I used to be associated with St Bridget's, that joined with De La Salle to become La Salle. And so then I coached from 14s to 18s. I used to coach the under-12s and the under-18s at De La Salle. And then these kids would go on and leave there and go to become Colts players, and their kicking would go off or something, so they'd come up home and say, I'm not dropping the ball right, what am I doing wrong? And I'd get them in the passageway, and we'd straighten them out, because if they didn't straighten it out, Shirley had those ducks on the wall. You remember the ducks that used to sit on the wall?
Flying ducks,
And
yeah.
she used to say, if you knock me bloody ducks off, you're gone. So they had to kick it straight. They couldn't hit the ducks on the wall.
Did the ducks ever get hit?
By us they did. We used to play footy with a pair of socks, my family, my boys and myself. As I was getting older, when Percy was about 10 or 11 and Greg was 8, they were wild devils. So we get a pair of socks on the door at this end and the door at the other end of the goals. And we used to knock the ducks off a bit, but we used to catch them before they hit the floor. I wonder where those ducks went to. I wonder where they did go to. It was a good fun house.
So how big was the backyard?
It was gigantic. Well, it was a big block. And there were rose beds at the back, but we knocked them out pretty quick. We had bird cages. We loved not a horse in the backyard. chook yard and a horse in the backyard, but we cleared all that out and put kaikouri right down to the back fence and then put a big wire guard up across the back because we didn't want to kick the footy over the back because neighbours at the back, they had a market garden and they used to give us stuff from the market garden, so we didn't like to knock that around. And so we had a big 10 or 12 foot wire thing on the back to stop the ball footy going over the back. And Mrs. Gardner, our lady friend, the old lady next door, she loved the kids, and we had an old picket fence between her place and our place, and the pickets were getting knocked off, so we knocked that fence down too. So we could I could drive a caravan. We had a caravan. We used to go away to Bunbury, the whole family in the caravan, in Christmas holidays, and you could drive down her driveway and park my caravan around the back of our place. So we knocked her fence down too. And I remember one day the kids, we used to play cricket with a cricket ball, no muck around with tennis balls. And one of them had hit a ball through her window and the side window. And I thought, oh, this is not good. So I said to him, you go in and get it. And she was at the door standing with me. She said, first thing she said, that must have been a good shot. So we fixed the window and away we went again, but we didn't then put a bit of wire up to look after the window. But the neighbours were terrific. No matter where the ball went, they chucked it back. Well, it was their kids playing in the backyard too.
Right.
So 100. Yeah, there was always 20 kids in the backyard. Priados and DeLucas and Daniels. We even had Wilkie's, Aussie kids. And my kids, yeah.
So presumably that was bigger than a quarter acre then?
It turned into we had a floodlit. I had a floodlit, a big tennis floodlit light there so they could play in the dark in the summertime. And yeah, it was big. We played real big cricket matches there. It was good fun. It was good fun.
And what was the horse for?
My kids needed to learn to ride.
Okay.
Why ask you? I didn't. You know, I told you I liked horses.
Yeah.
One Christmas I said to Shirley, it'd be a good idea if I bought the kids a horse. So it wasn't a big horse. But then the kids couldn't be bothered riding a horse, so the horse got a bit up, used to get on his toes. If you don't ride a horse for a fortnight, they get very frisky. So of course the idiot that had to jump on the horse's back was me. So I used to ride up Frederick Street like a cowboy.
Really?
Yeah, I did. There was down the end there was one little street that went down the creek. I forget the name of the street, but it was sandy stuff. So, and then when the brothers went away at Christmas time from De La Salle, so I used to coach the cricket team when they were away over the east. But so the oval was now unoccupied, the De La Salle oval down there. So I used to take the horse down there and gallop him around that on the. Yeah, I used to jump on the horse's back and damn thing would be raring and kicking and carrying on. The kids got a bit frightened of the horse, I think. I think I bought the horse for myself, really.
Sounds like it.
I love a horse. I really do love a horse, yeah.
So was that common for people to have a horse?
No, I broke all the... I'm on the council. I'm a councillor. I became a councillor in Midland. When they amalgamated Guildford and the Shire of Swan and Midland, we all amalgamated, and I put my name up and got elected to that first council. I've still got that photo there somewhere of that first group of councillors. And I'm on the council, and it was illegal to have a horse in your backyard. But my neighbours didn't mind. No one complained.
Yep.
The council, well, I think they knew, but no one ever dobbed us in, so we had a horse in the backyard, yeah. Horse was with the chooks in the backyard. And the kids had pigeons over there too.
Right.
Yeah, dogs, cats and pigeons and horses, we had the lot. Every other kid liked to ride the horse.
Okay, so your children's friends and the neighbourhood kids all rode the horse?
Yeah, they all got on the horse, yeah. I've got old photos everywhere of the DeLucas on the horse, and yeah, everyone learned to ride a horse.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you've just mentioned you were on the council. When did you run for the council?
Well, first year of the amalgamation, I don't know what year that was, what it would have been, 69 or somewhere, was it? I don't know.
Right.
When they amalgamated. I did 2 terms. Well, in my second term, we sold out and we had no property in Midland.
Right.
So being a non-property holder, you were ineligible.
Okay.
But yeah, we were on the first amalgamated council. It was really good, and every bloke on that council, and I say bloke, and I feel bad about that because I know ladies on that council. There should have been, shouldn't there? But back in those days, because the women have good input. They think of things that blokes don't think of. But every bloke on that council, even though they had a ward, I was Midland, the Guildford blokes and the Swan blokes, not one of them ever voted, I believe, where they didn't think it was in the best interest of the amalgamation. And you know those blokes, they didn't get honorariums, those blokes. If they had to put someone in to do some work at their vineyard or whatever, in my case, a chemist shop, you had to pay the person to do that job while you went for... our council meeting was once a month on a Monday, and it was an all-day meeting from 9 till we finished probably about 7:30 at night. A couple of hours break for lunch. But if you had to put someone on to do your work, you paid them. Nowadays you get 30 grand as an honorarium.
Wow.
It's different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Those people, they did what they did, and they did everything in the best interest of the community, and they did, because that's what they wanted for the area, for the community. Yeah, they were good people, Sariches and Rakiches and Pavlinovich, Tigger. I'm trying to think of what his real first name was. Tigger's what we called him. He was a fiery devil, Tigger. But he cared about the Swan, he did. Joe Rakich. Yeah, they all did their best for the area that they came from. But collectively, every vote. And many a time I go Midland Mob would say to me, we want something done for a sporting complex, and I was on the finance committee. So I go along and meet the people from Midland, and the Gartwells and these blokes, all mates of mine from Midland Guildford Cricket Club, and they'd want this and they'd want that. And I'd go back and put my proposition, I'd argue for the case, get outvoted. They didn't think it was worth, they thought there were more worthy causes. When you went back to Gartwell and Slater and them, you just had to say, no, we didn't think it was worthwhile. And they'd say to me, how did you vote? Like the rest. They'd say, you never tried to make a big fella of yourself, and none of them ever did.
Right.
The decision of the council, the majority of the decision of the council was what we all decided was right, and that was the decision. And there was none of this going behind backs making a big fella of yourself, saying I wouldn't have voted that way to people. They were good people. It was a good time in Australian, and particularly West Australian history. Yeah, it was good.
So there were no factions or...
No. The first night when I got elected, they invited me to a bit of a show out at... Len Marshall was the chairman, he became the president, and they invited me out there, and some of them said, you want to be this way, and we're all here doing this and so forth, and we want this done, and we want this bloke as president, or that bloke as this, and I said, you can go to buggery. I said, I'm going to vote the way I think. And they all said that's fair enough, and that's how it went pretty well. Everyone listened to the argument and voted how they thought was right. I firmly believe that. They were good blokes. 30 grand now they get for doing it. It's a lot of money, isn't it?
Yeah.
No wonder your rates are higher.
Yeah.
Like the Mayor of Perth, he gets 180,000.
Yes, it's...
you would use 180,000 and they reckon they're civic minded. And a car. Don't get me on to what's going on today, I can tell you.
So what was the reason for you running for council and becoming a councillor?
Because I was a businessman there, I lived there. I was very interested in the sporting activities of the district, and I thought I had something to offer. Yeah, that was why. Yeah, and I wanted to see things, like we rezoned that Midland Railway land, and now it's a hell of a good shopping centre. And so, yeah, and somebody said, why don't you do this? And, yeah, I'd stopped playing footy at that stage. I had time. Shirley didn't think I had time. She thought I'd stay at home occasionally. Maybe washing the nappies instead of her having to do it would have been a good idea, but there you have it. Blokes will be blokes, won't they?
So you mentioned the rezoning of that railway land to what we now know as Midland Gate. What were the intentions and the ideals of that rezoning? Has that been achieved with...
Well, it was dead land. Like the railway line used to run through the back. Where I lived in Lloyd Street when I first went there, the Midland Railway line was right at my back fence.
Yeah.
The old train would go through every second day or somebody and give me a toot as he went past. But all that land, and they had sheds and so forth on that area there, and that was all land that was now the connection between Midland and Midvale, and that was sort of a barrier. It needed something worthwhile put there, and was valuable damn land. Like, it was really right in the heart of off Great Eastern Highway, very good access way. So it was good land, and it now became a situation where we could make the decision, what are we going to do with that? So that's what we decided to do with it. And the town planning people were all happy with that. You know, they wanted to see progress, and there it is, it's good.
So what other activities or processes were you dealing with during your time in council?
Well, in those days, are more domestic type things, you know, like, you know, all the things that you think are just ordinary things like rubbish collections and all those things, they are important. Like drainage, Midvale was swampy land, you know, and drainage was a big factor. So every council meeting was associated with those sort of decision making. Sure, we made, like Midland Oval was coming to the end of its time, and from there the move to Lilac Hill was starting to be thought about, and those type of things. Sterling Park was a place where Midvale Junior Footy Club over with the silos were, and that Sterling Park, that little oval, it was a terrible little oval where poor old Midvale had to train. We trained up to our knees in water most nights, and had a tin shed to change in. And so that land now that was not going to be used as an oval anymore, so you had to, that area there was now being thought about as being, more commercial, so you had rezonings to think about. And progress was happening. Midvale Junior Footy Club that was there on that ground, we were looking for something, well, people later than me, it was the councils later than me, that were looking for somewhere else to put them. So they vacated that land now became valuable, it now get it drained properly, and it now became commercial. There's a lot of those sign writing people there and all sorts of little commercial properties there. And now I believe that the workshops, when I was there, the workshops were big, and the workshops were the biggest producers of apprentices in Australia nearly, the Midland workshops. And that was really sad, the government was responsible for that. And then once that wasn't there, apprenticeships had fallen away. But now I believe that where Sterling Park was, and out where the silos were out along the railway line, I believe they're now going to start building railway carriages there again. It's good. Seems sad for me that to close something down that they did, to 40 years later to wake up that it was a good idea and go back to doing it. But they're going to do that in that area out there then. So those are the sort of zoning decisions that cropped up every week, you know, or every month. And you deal with them, You deal with them, and the council from when I left has grown and grown and grown, and they're still dealing with them. It's become a big area. Swan View was nothing when I was there. You know, it's only just starting itself off. Now it's a big area, and it's grown a lot, Midland. But Midland itself is still Midland, isn't it? And Frederick Street, the heart of it, I can tell you.
So that Sterling Park, was that on the railway?
You're heading
Is it
east up
LG?
towards Greenmount, right?
Yeah.
Right, you're heading. How do I describe where it would be? It was in on your southern side as you're heading up the Midvale proper. Places like Mathura Street and so forth. You think of where they are? Well, Sterling Park was south of them on the other side of the highway. There was a row of houses, and then tucked away in behind that was this little oval.
Right, and then the wheat silo.
And then the wheat silos were behind that. Then the railway line was behind that again.
I know. Yeah.
In other words, you're heading in the direction of the abattoirs.
Yeah.
Where you turned off to go to the abattoirs. That's where the Midland Railway line used to cross the highway there. Well, you virtually turned off there to get to Sterling Park.
Right.
And then headed in the back in there. The abattoirs continued on and went over further south. Before you crossed the railway line, you turned east, and that's where Sterling Park was. And it was horrible, believe me. These kids trained on that, and the water on one side was, well, Lindsay Johnson used to coach Midland, and I coached Midvale under 19s, and they were strong contests. We used to get 400 at games watching them. Good players. But you'd get around the backside watching the game and you'd find yourself, you'd roll your trousers up and you'd be 2 feet in water.
Yeah.
Sometimes I reckon the kids were playing outside us. You didn't know where the boundary line was. But they, there's not much grass and a lot of, but they were tough and they enjoyed it.
I have heard it colloquially referred to as Mudvale.
Yeah, because it was Mudvale. Yeah, you're further out, where Koskies lived in that. That area out there, the drainage was horrible. I mean, it was just dig a ditch and hope it. And sometimes I wonder whether our engineers knew water run downhill. Sometimes I did. I used to wonder that. I used to get a tennis ball and think, which way will this roll? But she was muddy up there, got out of Bellevue way. You could get bogged out there, believe me. Yeah.
Okay, so we were talking about council and rezoning. What about between the pharmacy and your serving on council, were there any benefits or detrimental effects with you serving on the council?
No. No. Had nothing to do with anything. No. No, there was nothing to be gained and nothing to be lost, no, it didn't mean I got extra customers or anything like that, or less customers.
Yep.
Anything that happened on council, and like people would come to your house because they had a problem with their rubbish not being picked up, or drainage or whatever. And they'd come around home to me with their problem. I'd go with them and have a look at what it was, and grab a couple of the other councillors from Midland, Lloyd Penn or whatever, and we'd go and have a look at it. People never ever blamed me or affected my business because of a problem on council. And I like to think that probably in every case they knew we were trying to fix it.
Yeah.
So I don't think made no difference. No, that absolutely no difference. Don't worry about that. That'll be someone trying to sell me something. Because my landline, no one knows my number.
Oh, okay. So, what do you think was your greatest achievement as a councillor?
I don't think I had a great achievement. I think I was part of the decision making that had to be made by 11 other blokes and myself. I personally never carried a banner. No, I never carried a banner. I mean, I never went on council to change the world. I went on council to make sure that Midland District continued to progress. So I think, no, I never had any great achievements. No, I didn't build Rome in a day.
Were there any regrets, from your time?
No, God, Midland, no. No, I've got no regrets. No, we never had a blue. We never had fallouts. We had differences of opinion, but no, everyone was trying to do your best for what it was. And the council itself was well administered. They had to be with me because I'm a chemist that came in off the street, and I didn't know bylaws and all that stuff. And sometimes I'd want to make a change that would see water run uphill, and the chief officer there would say to me, Percy, you're not allowed to do that. The bylaws, local government bylaws say you can't do these things that you want to do. And you took his word for it, and you just got on with what had to be done. So, no, I think people were different. Yeah, and people these days will probably tell you what their great achievements were. I didn't have any great achievements in life, I don't think.
What sort of relationship did the councillors have with the executive and the administration?
Good. Good. I'm trying to think of what his name was. He was very good. He lived on the corner of Frederick Street too, and Morrison Road. He was very good. No, he would just pull us into gear and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
come on, you can't do that, and you're getting out of line." And, yeah. No, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were very helpful.
Yep.
We were all just lay people.
Mhm.
We weren't politicians.
Mm.
We didn't, we weren't conversant with political bylaws, or we weren't, no, we were lay people going in to do a job for the community. And we were guided by them. And we relied on them, and they led us. And we had good ideas, more often than not non-workable. They told us what we could do. The relationship was good.
You also ran for the Labor Party.
Later when I come back down here, yeah.
Oh, okay.
That was at Melville, yeah, ran for East Melville. East Melville was I'm a Labor person. I mean, you're born in Kalgoorlie in those days. Kalgoorlie's changed a bit. But Kalgoorlie was Labor because they dug holes in the ground. They were miners. My grandparents were, Then I was at Fremantle. Fremantle's, well, that's Labor, lumpers. Then I went to Midland. Then I ended up at Willagee. So people were, the ordinary people were what I just always felt that everyone deserved equal opportunity. Like, I'm a chemist, so I could afford for my kids to do their leaving. In those days it was leaving, that's TE now, but I could afford to send my kids on to school, even though academically some of my kids weren't as clever as the kids across the road whose old man worked in the workshops. But because his income was at a level in those days that he really couldn't support a kid at school. And unless the kid was a genius and could earn a scholarship, it meant that kid had to leave school and go and work in the workshops and do an apprenticeship. And my belief was always that was wrong. Now, two of my kids went to university here, but the others did apprenticeships. Percy did his apprenticeship at the workshops in Midland, became an electrical fitter there, and he did his apprenticeship there. And so I'm always a believer, and I firmly believe that the Labor Party's philosophies were still an equalisation philosophy. In other words, everyone deserves to be given the opportunity to be as good as they can according to their level of intelligence. And to be a doctor, you need to be cleverer than to be a worker on the roads. But doesn't mean the worker on the road's not every bit as important as the doctor. When I was a kid in Kalgoorlie, I'm going to tell you this story. I'm coming home and I'm 19 years old. My old man ran the brewery in Kalgoorlie. And we're coming home one morning, he used to go around every morning to make sure the kegs got out to where they had to go, what pubs they had to go to. And I used to go around with him. And we're coming home, and at the back of our place, there was lanes. And we had toilets where they used to collect the pants. I'm talking back in the 30s, right? So there's a bloke at the lane with a pan on his shoulder with his leathers on, and my old man had grown up going to school with that bloke in Kalgoorlie because Dad was born and went to school in Kalgoorlie. And Dad's standing there and we're with this bloke and we're chatting away for 20 minutes and I'm going, I'm going like this. And when I got home, he said, "Who do you bloody think you are?" He said, "If that bloke didn't pick up the dunny pants," he said, "Tommy Burns, a doctor," he said, "Tommy Burns would be twice as busy if that bloke didn't pick up the dunny pants."
Yeah.
Everyone's important. There's a link in the chain and everyone's a link in the chain. I've never forgotten that. Yeah, because we had those blokes that picked up the dunny, and it would have been pretty stinking in Kalgoorlie if they didn't.
Yeah.
And that's a fact of life. Everyone's a link in the chain. And if everybody doesn't realise that, and that's what happens, too many times they don't. I still believe that.
So had that changed by the time you moved into Midland?
What's that?
People having dunny pans and
No, we had
night
sewage.
cup.
Yeah, we were. By the time I got to Midland, things were good.
Okay.
No, this was Kalgoorlie back in then. Oh, we got sewage in Kalgoorlie as time went by too. Yeah, we grew too, but that was a message back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I only asked because I grew up in Carlisle, and I remember as a young child.
Yeah.
So in the early '60s, we had
Yeah.
the toilet down the back.
Yeah. The lanes. The truck drove down the lane in the back, and they'd lift the flap of the pan, pull that can out.
Yeah.
You didn't want to be sitting on the dunny when they were changing the cans, did you? I dare say it happened, but
Oh, the good old days. Oh, so we've touched briefly on your coaching, junior coaching. There's one thing you mentioned to me off tape, and that was about the Fates and the Stefanelli Brothers chocolate wheel. Tell us about that.
yeah, well, de la Salle, we scratched for a quid. Like, you know, Peter Knox, who was just an absolute legend in Midland and did so much, particularly for the school and so forth there, and he got so many things going. And that's how the school got built. De La Salle was built with single brick. You know, every building bylaw in the world was broken to get that school up and going. But, you know, we had to raise our own money. Junior footy clubs had to do that. So the school had to run Fates. Brian Ball, who later became the Commissioner for Police, when I first was at De La Salle, he was a president of the Fathers Auxiliary, Brian. And he's a very good bloke and a lovely bloke. And eventually I became president and Brian stayed on, he was doing things. But we used to have to run Fates and we had to raise money and we had to get money, as much money as we could, and everyone came to the Fate and the whole community supported the school for the Fate when we had it on. But with Brian Ball, because we used to run little gambling tricks around the back behind the tuck shop or somewhere, you know, so we had to get Brian Ball to lead the ponies, give the kids the ponies rides, so we didn't know that we were actually gambling over. But you had to get a quid, and Stefanelli's, they had the wood yard, and they're still great people up there, and they did so much up there, the Steffs. And they had a big truck, so we used to go, a fellow named Smith, Jack Smith and I, we used to go, we had a contact where we could get a lot of toys and that, and we could get them cheap. In the middle of the year you could get them because Christmas, they'd had an overflow from Christmas, so we got all these toys cheap, and so we'd go to all the, like the Kalamunda show and the Gidgegan up show, and we get Stefanelli's truck and we put the chocolate wheel on the back of that and we parked next to the bar because everyone, the fathers took their kids and their wives to the show and then they went to the bar and had a good day. And so the blokes got happy and you could always sell all the bats and spin the wheel. And we used to go to those shows and we always sold out and we drove home coming back down Greenmount quite often. I don't know how we got home, but we did. But we made, you get $1,000, you make $1,000, probably quid in those days in the early parts of it. But that's what we did. That's how we raised money. We had Fates at the school, and we raised money, and we played scallywag tricks to get as much as we could. And everyone turned a blind eye because they knew it was a good cause.
Yeah.
But that's how that school. We built like the change rooms, the lights where I used to train the under 18s under lights on that oval. All the work done. You had to get the money somehow. Now today in footy circles they want, you know, in those days kids didn't pay big fees as registration fees in a junior footy club. All they had to do was find 2 bob, which is 2 shillings, to pay for the umpires, like every kid. And some kids couldn't get the 2 bob, so we'd dob it in and we'd put the 2 bob in. But they didn't have to pay exorbitant fees to get the right to play in a junior footy club. It was almost, we said they're an Australian kid, this Australian rules footy, it's their goddamn right to play footy. So they didn't have to pay exorbitant fees to Swan District's Footy Club, who ran the junior council. They did a terrific job. But we raised the money by Fates and that sort of stuff. And that's how we did it, and we got the support. Nowadays that can't happen, and it doesn't happen. And now kids paying up to $300 and $400 to register to play in a junior footy club. And you get a mum with 2 kids, get a single mum with 2 kids, and I get dirty on this, absolute dirty on this. You know, she's making a choice, can I afford my kids to play footy? And from the time kids start now in Auskick, which is babies, to the time they get to be playing under 16s, a drop off in the numbers is astronomical, and I reckon it's all down to have to pay the fees. Meantime, you see people like the Eagles and that strutting around with 40 million in the bank, and blokes, and elitism dominates. You know, the development at elitism level, the kids that they think are going to make AFL players, and then battling mums and so forth are trying to find money. They've got to put socks on them, they've got to put boots on them, they've got to put jumpers and shorts on them so they can train. They got to drive them now because grounds are further away from where they live than they used to be. And then they got to try and find this money to register for the right to play bloody Australian rules footy. Really make. But in our day, we raised the money. The kids, and the people from the Swan, they bought the oranges, and they had the orange juice and all that stuff that went with it. Yeah, people worked for, and we ran that footy club with volunteers. Yeah, everyone ditched in and just did their share, and the kids got the fun of playing. We had to buy jumpers, so how are we going to get jumpers? John Stefanelli was making a quid from the woodyard, so John, you better dob your hand in your pocket. He's in his 90s, John, now, you know. Do you know the Steffs?
Yeah.
Geez, they're good people. They're good people.
So, the footy that you were coaching at De La Salle was a whole separate team to the Midvale.
I coached Midvale. This is Swans Junior Council.
Yeah.
I was still playing league footy and state footy. And Midvale came to me and said they didn't have a coach. Keith Slater and Kevin Gardner said to me, "You're mad, these blokes are wild." Midvale. First night I went to trainers, the best night I've ever had. Like, they were 100 mile an hour. They trained real fast, real hard, real concentrated. They listened, they wanted to be good.
Yeah.
So I coached at Midvale for 3 or 4 years. I won a couple of premierships and they were good. And then my kids then started to go to De La Salle, so naturally I've... And De La Salle had a team in the Swan District's Junior Council. We were the best team in the competitions. That school had a heart.
Yeah.
We had players that could play. Johnny Hayes, that I coached my first year, he played 299 league games of footy in South Australia, West Australia, and for the state, this bloke. Stockton and Mountain, we were Delavale, and Michael Smith was a state player, got drafted, played for Carlton. Yeah, we produced the best players, and I won 2 or 3 premierships with De La Salle in under 18s. And we played in the junior council, so that was like against Belmont, against Redcliffe, and Bassendean, and that was the junior council. That was high class. And then they'd have combined sides at the end of the year, and I used to coach the Swans combined side under 18s. Yeah, but.
So do all these teams still exist?
Yeah, they do. But it's become more inter-district stuff now. So if you're a parent now, and you're a battling parent, all of a sudden your kid can be training, say, in Midvale, but he might have to play a game at Rockingham. And that gets hard for parents to cart around, you know, particularly these days when 2 people in the family have got to work. You might have a mum working on a Saturday morning. And they're making it hard for kids to do what they should have a right to do. And that's all this elitism. I think more... I had a philosophy at De La Salle that chumps make champs because chumps give champs a team to play in. Like, I'd have 6 or 8 kids that were really outstanding, but if I didn't have the other 16 or 18 kids to make a team, those 6 or 8 good players wouldn't have had a team to play in.
Yeah.
So the whole philosophy of all the kids playing in my teams was to make the bottom 16 or 18 better.
Right.
And they'd all help to do that. And no one ever bagged anyone playing with them.
Yeah.
If a kid was a dud and he kicked a goal, we celebrated more after he kicked a goal than ever. It was good. That was the sort of philosophy. But it's not there now. It's different. You're judged on how a higher level they think you're allowed to play at. I still coach at Swans, like you know, with their Colts and that. And it frustrates the hell out of me that we don't think of the blokes that are just helping to make up a team. And the junior council, when we get kids there now, I get 15, 14s development squads, they can't kick the footy. So what's happening at the development? In my day, kids could, but then again, they didn't have phones to play on and laptops to play on. They had a footy to kick around the paddock and they got good at it because they did a lot of it. Changing world. You're part of it, you know.
It's not my fault.
You're the only one here to blame.
You had your daughter at St Bridget's School.
Yeah.
So were you involved in any girls' sports?
Yeah, I used to. When they'd have their sports on, I was always the starter. And with my daughter, when she was in the running race, I used to say to her, you put 2 bullets in the gun, no caps in the gun. Right? And if someone breaks when they're on the mark, say on the mark, get set, go. I was a good runner at school, so I know all about these things. I used to say to Sue, right, I'll only put one cap in the gun when you're racing, Sue. So as soon as they saw on the mark, get set, you run. Because I can't fire twice to bring you back. No, I didn't do that. But I did that at De La Salle once. We had the fathers in a race, right? The parents in a race. So I'd been the starter all day at the sports, at the De La Salle sports, right? So now the fathers are going to have the fathers race and I'm going to run in this race. So I only put one cap in the gun. And I said to this other bloke, who's now going to be the starter, all right, here's what you do. You get set, go, and if somebody breaks, you pull the trigger again, and there'll be a second shot, and they got to come back. But of course, I only put one in, and so as soon as he said get set, I off. I beat them. And they were a bit crooked on me, I might tell you.
I can't understand why.
They expected me to cheat. They all broke too, believe me. They were all off too.
Okay, where do we go from here? Were there any other duties that you, or any other things that you were involved with?
Yeah, the cricket.
De La Salle.
Yeah, cricket. The brothers used to go away at Christmas time. They went home to wherever they came from, you know, eastern states and so forth. So the school became defunct. And we used to, like as parents from around the area, we kept our eye on it. And the cricket team had to play in the Midland Guildford cricket competition, junior 16s, 14s, whatever it was. So I coached that team in the summertime while the brothers were away. And we went around and played in the district cricket stuff. And when the athletics, the inter-school athletics were on, because I liked athletics, I was good at it at school. So I'd go down and do teach them the shot put and hurdle and that sort of stuff. And yeah, sports, so I love sport. And I played cricket for Midland Guildford Cricket Club when I was 38.
Yeah.
Jackie Gartrell came to me and he said, we've got an old bloke and we're going to play third grade cricket.
Yeah.
So and Shirley said, you're not playing? I said, yeah, I think I'll have a crack. So I used to open the bowl until I tore a hamstring after 2 overs. That brought that to an end. But yeah, I went and played with them. My oldest son was a very good cricketer. And he played for Midland Guildford in their 16s. And we used to go to Bunbury for holidays. And I used to drive back every Saturday morning, bring him back and play cricket, then go back there to the caravan at Kambana Park on the holidays. But he became a good cricketer. When we shifted to Melville, he opened the bowling for Melville and did really well. He was a good bowler, yeah. And they all like cricket, yeah. So we did, yeah, any sport was good. Any sport was good.
Did you ever have time to do nothing?
I'm still not doing nothing. I reckon I don't want to do nothing. I reckon dying's the last thing you should. And I reckon you die by doing nothing. Like I train horses now and still coach footy at Swans, and I was coaching at both clubs, Swans and Claremont, till the beginning of this year. And yeah, no, I think no, I don't. I get very bored doing nothing. Yeah, I hope that I never get, and I'm sad for people. Health is luck. It's just pure luck. Like Shirley died at 53, got cancer at 51, never drank and never smoked. And health is luck. And I hope I don't boast about that I keep doing, because I've been lucky, because I haven't got a major health problem. I don't wear glasses so I can see, and my legs get aching and tired, but I can still walk and I can still do it. And my mind has been all right, so I'm not like some of my mates that I see with Alzheimer's, you know, and that's all luck. That's luck. That's not being clever. Bloody health is luck. And you've got to be grateful to God that you've got health. A fella said to me at the trots on Monday, as a matter of fact, and I said, how you going? He said, I'm good. He said, I'm real good. And he said, I've never been better. And I said, give us a break. I said, you've never been better. He's 65. I said, never been better. He said, Percy, I got me health. I've never been better. And he's right. Health is luck. No, don't do nothing. You do nothing, you'll shrivel up and die.
I'm sure all the sport that you've played has played a big part in your longevity.
Yeah, I don't know whether it has or it hasn't. When Shirley died, I wouldn't have minded dying too, I can tell you. it's never been quite the same since then. I've floundered around looking to make something happen, but yeah, I'm not sure. No, I don't know whether sport has had anything to do with it. I think it's how you're made, isn't it? You're made to like I've got a photo on the wall over there with a kid. Well, I was at East Fremantle, running around that paddock at East Fremantle, the one on the bottom on the left. And it was at East Fremantle, and this kid came out, and I was running laps in the warm-up before we started training at East Fremantle. That would have been 58, I reckon. And the kid said, "Do you mind, Mr. Johnson, if I run a couple of laps with you?" And I liked kids then, and I liked their footy. And so I suppose that photo tells where my life was going to go with kids, yeah. And coaching juniors and that. And yeah, I think that's how you're made, isn't it? I think it is. I don't know. Thank my mum and dad for that, I suppose.
Tell me a little bit more about your involvement with the cricket club.
I was a committee man there.
Yeah.
God, they had a good cricket team up there, Slater and Gartwell, and they were good, and Bruce Yardley and Steamer Wilson, and yeah, they were absolutely outstanding. Thomas used to stand up over the stumps to the fastest bowlers in the world, Bobby Lane, and yeah, they were, and Norm O'Neill came over, and Norm O'Neill was an Australian cricketer, and they all played for Midland Guildford. So of a Saturday afternoon, every Saturday afternoon, again, Shirley used to say to me, "What are you doing?" "I'm going to cricket to watch Midland Guildford play." I wasn't a good husband, was I? But so I used to go over because these people played outstanding cricket. They won premierships and the Royals in the finals, and so you could go Saturday afternoon to Midland Oval and watch the best cricket in Western Australia played over there. And then I became a committee man there because they said to me, "You better do this," and so I was associated and enjoyed that. Yeah, I liked cricket. At school I played cricket, and in Kalgoorlie I played cricket. But then later when I was studying and playing footy, I didn't have time for cricket in that period. But I love cricket, and so I was involved in that sense. And then later, like I said, I played third grade for them, and my boys were they were good at cricket, and they liked cricket. Cricket, that's all you did in my day as a kid. Played footy in the winter and cricket in the summer. And growing up in Kalgoorlie, that's what I did. So I like cricket. I got involved in the cricket club in that sense, but like I said, those blokes were good at it. Slater and them, and it was a skylark because gee, they used to give the opposition hell. They did taunt them quite. Norm O'Neill was good at it, but I wouldn't have liked to have been batting with Norm standing in close to the wicket. I think they said some bad things to people, I really do. Get their mind off the ball a bit. But those were the days when people did those things, you know. But it was good.
So what was your role with the committee?
With the
Guildford cricket?
we just made decisions, fundraising situations. It was the same sort of thing. I suppose that was a lead-in to me going on the council. You know, we ran barbecues. I remember the West Indies came here before the touring sides played at Lilac Hill. The West Indies come here. That was Gary Sobers, Rowan Canai, blokes like that. I mean, Sobers the best player of all time, I think, Nelly. And being on the committee, at my place in Lloyd Street, so that must have been 59 or 60, we put on a big barbecue at the house, and so we had big Wes Hall and blokes like that at the barbecue in Lloyd Street, coming in and out of the house. And Gary Sobers was just an absolute gentleman because he was a lovely bloke. Like the women came over there and they put on salads and we put a barbecue out the back and we had all those blokes there. Kenai wasn't as good a bloke, but Sobers and he was such a courteous bloke, Gary Sobers, and Shirley really admired him. And I remember then they were playing the state side. And I said, "We'll go down at the Wacker," and I said, "We'll go down and watch them play." And so, of course, I went down early, and she was going to come down a bit later after she got the kids off to school. And I rang her and I said, "You better get here because this bloke's batting Sobers. He made 150 in that game." against the stateside Mackenzie. Good bowlers were playing for West Australia, open bowlers for Australia. And this bloke hit them all over the park. But we had them at home when Midland entertained them in that match at Midland Oval. That was more what my role was.
Yeah.
Yeah, you put on a barbecue, raised £1 so the club could keep going.
So was your involvement only when they had moved to Lilac Hill, or when they were also...
Lilac Hill was after me, but the ideas were there.
Right.
When I was at council, that was a progressive ideas.
Yeah.
And at first I was angry about that because Midland Oval was like the old bike track there.
Yeah.
You know, in those days, back in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, track bike riding was big in Australia.
Yeah.
Kalgoorlie, Midland and Fremantle all had very big cycle tracks around their ovals. And the best riders in the world came and rode at those tracks. You know, and so Midland Oval had that characteristic about it, and a tradition and a history about it. So I was a fighter for the people from the Swan that had their ambitions to go there. And even though I was a fighter, I was wrong, because Lilac Hill's been good, hasn't it?
Yes.
It's been good. It was time for Midland, the amalgamation, and Lilac Hill has turned into something that's been good. So even though I got outvoted, like I said so often, even though you got outvoted on council, 99% of the time the decision made collectively by the majority was right, and that was another one. But Midland Oval, I like history, I like tradition. Yeah, like when I walk onto East Fremantle Oval, because I played the first game, we were at Fremantle Oval when I first played with East Fremantle, and we shared with South Fremantle on the ground. We moved out to East Fremantle in 1953 and I played in the first game for East Fremantle on that ground. So when I walk on that ground now, I still feel an affinity for that, you know, so I'm that sort of bloke. So I'm sad that Midland Oval now is sort of semi-defunct. So the stories of the bike track will never be told, will they? Did you talk to Phil Kidd about that sort of stuff?
I haven't, no. I've talked with a chap called Percy Cooper, whose family were all cyclists, including his father at the turn of the century.
So he'd remember that stuff.
And Percy was a cyclist in the 1940s.
Yeah. So he'd remember those bike riders, like in Kalgoorlie, because I grew up there. And we had an amateur athletic club in association with the bike. We used to run on Tuesday nights. We had bookmakers and everything. Yeah. And it was big. And we had people like Hubert Opperman and that coming riding up there. Yeah. You know, we had the best riders in the world up there. Yeah. And it was big up there, you know, and blokes went over the fence, they put you over the fence. Those bike riders were serious on that track stuff. And Fremantle Oval was the same. We had a bike track when I first played at Fremantle Oval. Right. We had a bike track around that. It's sad all that's gone, that community stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I suppose I tell you it's better, but I'm not sure it is better. People had to work, like I talked about being on the committee at Midland with the cricket club. People from the community had to work to allow the club to survive. Yeah. So it knitted the community behind the club, I think, those days. Now people take it for granted that it's going to happen. Yeah. Different world. Not as good.
Okay, before we finish, is there anything else that you'd like to add about your time with Midland?
No, my time in Midland was just the people. It was just the people, like, you know, Shirley was down at where they got the lunches at the school, and the brothers would be sending kids down. Well, you tell Mrs. Johnson and Mrs. Smith to stop their giggling, they're distracting the kids in the classroom, because the mothers in that area, and that was De La Salle, but at Midvale Primary School and wherever you went, that's what the mothers were doing. So the mothers knew each other and they shared each other's interests, and the fathers did the same, because you had the auxiliary to raise the money to keep a school going or a footy club going, and that just bred a community. That just bred people, and it bred a community to respect everybody's position in the community. And that was what Midland. That's what Midland was. Like I talk about Frederick Street, but there were a bucket load of Like those streets in Midvale, Nathura and all those streets, they got stories to tell. They produce some damn good footballers in those streets. But the blokes went to work to get a quid so that their family and their kids could do those things. They knew that they had to get a quid, that they had to be able to have 2 bob to give the kid to put in so that he'd pay for the umpire. But then he knew that he had to come down to the footy club and help the footy club to raise money so that we could buy the jumpers.
Yeah.
So the whole everything depended on the whole community being a community. And that's what Midland was. It was more of that than anywhere else I've ever been.
Really?
Oh, God, yeah. God, yeah. Yeah, it was, yeah, everywhere else I've ever been. They were probably wealthier in other areas that I'd been. But Midland, Midvale, yeah, the Swan, they had to work. Yeah, they had to work to make things happen so that their kids could play sport. And the kids didn't expect to be playing on pristine ovals like they do today.
Yeah.
Like an oval like Midland Oval had to be an oval shared by cricket and footy. So you had to have a cricket pitch in the middle of it. Today you go to Optus Stadium and for a cricket pitch, they fly a pitch in, then they take it out. So it's pristine all over the ground, like Bassamine Oval when I went up there and coached up there. It had a stinking cricket pitch in the middle of the ground, like the mud used to get in there and yeah, they'd choke you on it. They'd stick it down your neck when they got hold of you. But everything had to be shared.
Yeah.
But it's different today. Like ovals now they don't share, do they? They're for one thing and not for the other. But where does the money come from? I don't know. I tell you where it comes from. By a parent have to pay $300 to register a kid to play Australian rules footy. And single mums, you take them, and I feel that bad about single mums. What a job they do. Some dirty mongrel's done the wrong thing, and left them, and they got to raise 2 kids, and then they got to try and get money for the kid to play sport.
Yeah.
And then you got to pay $300 and $400 to register for the right to play in a junior footy club.
Yeah, it doesn't seem right, does it?
It's horrible, and I can tell you these footy commissions, they've spent money in a lot of areas, but it's only for the elite kids, not for every kid. That's why I like Midland, because it's for every kid.
You like Midland because it's for every kid.
For every kid. Yeah.
That's lovely.
True, but
Okay, we'll finish there. Percy, thank you so much for the time and information you've shared with me.
There.
It's all on there. End of interview.